morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where it seems that Hollywood is finally back from their holiday vacation. I'm talking about Christmas and New Year's, and January was pretty sleepy. We thought we might get a Justice League trailer. Didn't happen, but Warner Brothers is awake now with Damage Control, and they're the first story of the day, but some other very interesting things are happening in Tinseltown as well. So I'm pretty excited actually about today's episode. It's very gossipy. All right, so the first thing, of course, is again the damage control that Warner Brothers is trying to do in the wake of the news story, which broke very late on Monday, that Ben Affleck will not direct the Batman. They said, again, it was a mutual decision, but a lot of people are trying to play it off as a very negative situation with the sky is falling coverage, right? Like, oh, this is only the tip of the iceberg. And, you know, as some of you pointed out, maybe it would have been a little beneficial for them to announce the new director at the same time they announced they were losing the previous one. But that couldn't happen. But I do think that DC did the next best thing, and that is flood the news headlines through the Hollywood Reporter, interestingly enough, with positive DCEU stories. I think both to reassure fans, but also the rest of the industry, because they're sending out invitations to join the DCEU as we speak. They need that new Batman director, they need someone to direct The Flash, and of course they want to cast people in Gotham City Sirens. And that's going to be hard to do if everybody thinks that the DCEU is headed off a cliff, or has already jumped. But I think they were very effective with this Aquaman coverage. There was the story about casting Black Manta, which I covered, and then while I was editing that video, word came out that Nicole Kidman is in talks to join the film as well, to play Aquaman's mother from Atlantis, who has an affair with the lighthouse keeper, and then leaves her son with that individual while she goes back to the royal kingdom of Atlantis, and mothers another child, Orm, who goes on to become Aquaman's underwater enemy. All right, so we talked about that a little bit yesterday. I think, you know, Nicole Kidman, I think she's a little infamous for paycheck gigs, particularly these days, because her star has fallen. You know, just like Matthew McConaughey, she was able to have a bit of a renaissance right after she broke up with Tom Cruise. She got a lot of sympathy because he blindsided her right when their prenup, the 10-year term ended. Sure enough, she was served with divorce papers. She said she was blindsided, but if she knew there was a 10-year period, one would think that part of her would maybe suspect something would happen after the 10 years. But she had also a great run of movies. That was the same year that she had The Others, produced by Tom Cruise, interestingly enough, and also Moulin Rouge. So she was doing really well there for a while, but, you know, kind of like Nicolas Cage and, you know, Johnny Depp, her contemporaries, she's fallen upon hard times. She is, doing very well with Lion, but at the same time, I don't think anybody really feels that, no one's really talking about Lion. They're not like, it's not like a hot Oscar movie. It's like, it's Harvey Weinstein's entry this year. That's nice. So I think, you know, they're shooting in Australia, where, of course, Nicole Kidman comes from. They're probably going to make it a really easy gig for her with a minimal commitment and a huge payday to try and give a little more luster to Aquaman. It makes sense to me. I can understand that. Nicole Kidman's been some real clunkers, though, including a Batman clunker, right? You might recall she was Dr. Chase Meridian opposite Val Kilmer. That was so bad. So I would be a little bit concerned about her hurting the image of the movie, even with some of the prestigious era that she did enjoy. Some of you also pointed out she looks nothing like Jason Momoa. So of course, you know, you'd have to have an interesting casting for the person who works the lighthouse. I would maybe go with Gil Birmingham, who plays Jeff Bridges' partner in Hell or High Water. He does a great job. But I don't know what they're going to go with. I think it'll be interesting. But I'm hoping that this movie will work out. I'm very happy with who they cast. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as Black Manta, so I'm hoping that this comes together nicely. But I was impressed again with the damage control exerted by DC for the DCEU by Warner Brothers. Interestingly, they've been very low key on the Lego Batman movie, perhaps because of that tweet that some of you sent me where someone was like, finally a good DC movie, and you're like, why do you gotta diss the rest of the DCEU to praise the Lego Batman movie? So perhaps they did not want that narrative to take hold, and they feel people are going to go and see it anyway. I mean, I think it's very heavily advertised to families and kids, like on TV, but in terms of like headlines and media coverage, it's been pretty quiet, and maybe that's why. So that's the first story of the day. Do you think that Warner Brothers has done a good job with Damage Control? What do you think of Nicole Kidman in Aquaman? I don't know. We thought that maybe the people of Atlantis would be a little more diverse to mirror the Polynesian people who have such a great relationship with the sea, Moana. So I think people thought maybe the movie was going that direction. But I think when you cast someone like Nicole Kidman, unless they're going to flip it like it originally was, where the father came from Atlantis and the mother, the New 52 flips it, but in the original incarnation of Aquaman, the lighthouse person was a mother or something like that. So they could do that. I don't know. And then Nicole Kidman might be in the movie more. I don't know. She really want to spend a lot of time in a water tank? Let's see. If I come to think of it, if I were like Nicole Kidman, I'd be like, can I be the parent on land? That would just be, better for me. All right. So that's the first story of the day. Now, speaking of losing directors, Universal looks like they just lost their director for their Scarface remake, the second remake of this famous film, who was going to be Antoine Fuqua. But I think they dodged a bullet there because I think that Magnificent Seven just didn't materialize. Antoine Fuqua was in a really good position after The Equalizer, great movie, and he got Magnificent Seven as a reward for that, reteaming with Denzel Washington. But while I thought that Magnificent Seven was certainly a pleasant ride, for us cowpoke, I felt that it was not anywhere near the quality of the film that it had been sold to us as, and it needed to be, I think, to stand out from the crowd. I think it ended up being, like a solid, a matinee or a rental, and a movie like that should never be a solid matinee or a rental. So anyway, I think Antoine Fuqua, I would be reluctant to hire him, quite frankly, at this point. I know he has, Training Day, and but look how David Ayer wrote Training Day, and that's been tricky too. And speaking of David Ayer, he was associated with rewriting this Scarface remake in 2011, but he doesn't seem to be attached to it anymore either. But you know who is attached to it? I'm so pleased. Diego Luna is attached to play the lead. How fabulous for him! It's so nice to see the Rogue One cast because, we can't have spoilers, but it's nice to see them get some reward out of being in that movie. Ben Mendelsohn, of course, going on to be the Sheriff of Nottingham in the new Robin Hood movie, to take over a role made famous by Alan Rickman in Robin Hood Prince of Thieves opposite Kevin Costner. Fabulous. And now Diego Luna is going to get to be the lead in Scarface. This is so exciting. He got great coverage for, keeping his Mexican accent and how much that meant to some Mexican Americans who've had difficulty being accepted. And I think that, so to see him get to be the star of that movie, this is finally his chance. I'd be nervous if I were him because he didn't have to, bear the brunt of the load with Rogue One. That's a Star Wars movie. People are going to go. But with a Scarface film starring him, he'd have to work very hard to get people into the theater. Although maybe they'd be more prone to go after seeing him in Rogue One. I thought he was fabulous. He's one of my favorite characters in the movie. So he's going to be playing a Latino gangster on the rise in Los Angeles. They're going to have to be very different from what Brian De Palma did with the role with Al Pacino, although, that was Al Pacino playing a Latino character, and obviously Al Pacino is not Latino. That was in 1983. But it's a fabulous film, very famous, beloved by a very strong fan base. It's iconic. And that was a remake of a famous film made in 1932 starring George Raft, which interestingly enough was directed by Howard Hawks and produced by Howard Hughes. So a lot of Hollywood history with this franchise as Universal tries to turn it into one. The idea is that you would remake Scarface every couple of decades to reflect the current gangster climate, which I think is not a bad idea. And with El Chapo, the legend of El Chapo growing by the day, and a lot of talk about Mexico and U.S. relations, this could be very interesting. So I'm very excited for Diego Luna. It couldn't have happened to a nicer and more charismatic actor. Again, I loved him in Rogue One, one of my favorite characters, and I'm so happy actually that my two favorite K2SO, I will hope he gets more work, but my favorite characters in the movie, Orson Krennic and Cassian Andor, are getting work. I'm so pleased. I'm glad that everybody or at least Hollywood seems to agree that they were the standouts. So fabulous. So I'm curious though, considering how iconic Al Pacino and Brian De Palma's Scarface is, do you think anyone could ever hope? I don't think Antoine Fuqua could hope to improve on it. Let's hope they can find someone who can live up to that legacy and add to it. All right, so that's the second story of the day. Now, the third story of the day, oh my goodness, I can't believe I missed this story, which broke on January 17th, and it's February 1st. I saw a follow-up story in the Hollywood Reporter today being like, do you think because Thomas Tull was fired from Legendary, other studio heads might be fired? And I was like, Thomas Tull was fired from Legendary? How did this not get more coverage? This is a fascinating story, so allow me to walk you through it. Now, Legendary, of course, has become legendary, although to some people infamous in Hollywood, for its saga. It went from being a finance company, largely for Warner Brothers Pictures. It financed the Dark Knight trilogy by Christopher Nolan and the Hangover movies, to becoming a production company itself. And that was actually a really big point of contention, that people were getting very angry that this finance company was taking creative credit for movies. For instance, when it decided to break from Warner Brothers and went to Universal, Universal got very angry that Legendary claimed creative credit for Jurassic World, a film which Universal insists they only helped to finance. And that actually led to the eventual parting of the ways of Legendary and Universal, and really torpedoed Crimson Peak, as you might recall, the Guillermo del Toro movie, and also Pacific Rim 2. But apparently Pacific Rim 2 continues to be a big problem because Wanda Group, who Thomas Tull sold Legendary to just early last year, is very unhappy with Pacific Rim 2, the way that's going. I'd be like, hey, Guillermo del Toro, are you single-handedly ruining Legendary? But no, Legendary is ruining itself. But anyway, Wanda's also apparently upset about the way The Great Wall has turned out. The Matt Damon movie that has been unfortunately branded the White Savior movie. Now, that's done okay business in China, but it's looking to be DOA everywhere else. So Wanda Group, very unhappy with the way that Legendary has progressed just a year into the purchase. And they've decided to do something about it. Oh my gosh! They actually, as I said at the beginning of the story, have forced Thomas Tull to resign from the company that he founded in 2005. And again, it was he engineered the sale to Wanda in 2016 for $3.5 billion. I hope he gets an amazing golden parachute. That is just shocking to see someone's own company taken away from them. That's always the danger when you sell. So again, I hope that he got paid quite a bit of money in the process, because he certainly lost everything that he worked for from a professional standpoint. Maybe someone else will hire him, but he's not too popular in town again because of all the problems that he's had with different studios claiming creative credit for films that he simply financed. The whole story actually reminds me of Relativity Media, a similar situation where Ryan Kavanaugh became persona non grata in Hollywood after he started out as a financier and tried to move into becoming a production company and even his own distributor, as you might recall. Universal had a problem with them, saying that Relativity helped finance Snow White and the Huntsman, the first film, but then created competition themselves with Mirror Mirror. So it's and Relativity Media, of course, has been recently trying to claw its way out of bankruptcy. It's not going so good. And the latest headline I saw concerning them was that they were about to be kicked out of their Beverly Hills offices because they hadn't paid their rent in quite some time. Fascinating. But to see the fall from grace of Legendary, considering how successful Legendary and how iconic they were for quite some time, associated with the success of the Nolan trilogy, but of course we're being told, in retrospect, that was not the case. They just took credit where they did not deserve it. But they were able to weave this image for themselves and become their own production company, which was attractive enough to Wanda to warrant a $3.5 billion price tag. But now Wanda, I guess, sees what they've bought and has decided to just take the name and the image and the reputation for what it is publicly, not privately in Hollywood, and just totally to gut it and see what they can do with it themselves. And taking over for Thomas Tull, interestingly enough, is Jack Gao, who studied at UCLA, but has worked in China. I couldn't find out if he's originally from China, but he's been working there for quite some time. At one point in his career was the president of Microsoft China, and has been working at Wanda Group as, I believe, CEO and Senior VP of their international business holdings. But now he will become the permanent CEO of Legendary, the first production company in Hollywood run outrightly by someone from China. Fascinating. All right, so those are the three stories of the day. Now, the viewer question comes from Sufyan27, who had a question about the Super Bowl, which we talked about on Monday with the trailers. We're starting to get some idea of what trailers will be debuting on game night. So Sufyan27 says, "Hey Grace, I was wondering, why do studios pay literally millions of dollars, it's I believe $5 million for a 30-second spot, to release a Super Bowl TV spot when they can release a trailer on YouTube for which they make money and get the same level of attention? I'm not American. I've never experienced the Super Bowl hype, so YouTube is more accessible on a global level as well. Thanks, as always, Sufyan. All right, so Sufyan, great question. I think it's something that certainly does warrant explaining. So, Super Bowl, yes, because we're literally the only country that plays football. Nobody really pays attention to it outside of the United States. However, the United States is still, China might overtake us any day now, and is predicted to quite soon. But still, for the time being, the United States is the biggest movie market in the world. So even though the Super Bowl only reaches the American audience, that's still a very big audience. So Hollywood wants those eyeballs. But even more so, the people who watch the Super Bowl largely are not internet types, right? So they're not going online to YouTube to see these trailers. So the Super Bowl is a chance for, in one moment, for Hollywood to reach a very large group of people, millions of people who don't watch trailers online for the most part. This is a way to get them excited about something. There's still some prestige about being a movie that warrants a Super Bowl spot. It's like a way for a Hollywood studio to tag a movie as important. Like, it was worth us. This movie, we feel so strongly in it, and it's such an exciting film that it's worth spending $5 million extra to advertise it at the Super Bowl, right? It's kind of like having a float in a parade, which is another way that movies sometimes are advertised, for instance, at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, right? So this all boils down again. And also, you might recall that The Bachelor is where Disney premiered the final trailer for Beauty and the Beast. And that is a show that in its last season, it's in its 21st season, and in its last season in 2016, it averaged 7 to 9 million viewers an episode. So there's the eyeballs. So the bottom line, though, is that there are still very large groups of people who do not watch trailers online. What? I know it's very hard for us to believe, but that's why they still show trailers also at the movies. So these people do not watch trailers online. They don't consume a lot of online entertainment. They're the ones who still watch commercials, or don't go to the movies that often. Remember, the majority of people in this country only go to the movies once a month, and even that, most people go every couple of months. Now, of course, some people also don't go that often, but still consume a lot of online content. But still, there is like that holdout, particularly in middle America, where a movie really needs to connect if it's going to join the $1 billion club. That's the last group that you need to really supercharge you into that box office club. It's not so much a rare club anymore, but it's still difficult to get into, unless you're a Disney movie. But so anyway, that's why they spend the money. They want to the number one reason is they want to reach that audience that isn't online. And the second thing is they want to have the prestige of a Super Bowl spot, the pageantry. To have, everybody the day after is talking about ads. There's a lot of buzz factor. Everybody goes online to watch all the ads. There's people going online, and they want their movie to be part of that discussion. What's the big Super Bowl spot? Even Avengers, even Captain America: Civil War had a Super Bowl spot last year, and this year it's rumored that Guardians of the Galaxy will have one. So they want to be part of the hype. They want it, and they want the Super Bowl branding on their movie. So that's why they're willing to spend the money. And it still does go online, so it reaches everybody. So that's why the branding's part of it too. Because when you go and you search for it, you'll be searching for, so-and-so trailer, Super Bowl trailer, right? So-and-so movie, Super Bowl trailer. And Super Bowl is synonymous with big deal. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please write down below, I think, today's top 3 stories, Sufyan's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.